Hey, everybody, and welcome back. We like to dive deep into some pretty interesting topics on this show. And today we're tackling something that's, well, a little bit sensitive, maybe even a little taboo for some folks. But I think it's a conversation that's really important to have, and that's cremation and all the different ways people are choosing to say goodbye to loved ones these days.
It's a topic that's definitely evolving, and it's fascinating to see how cremation is becoming more and more common.
It really is. And, I was looking at some stats, and I was pretty blown away by how much cremation rates have actually changed even just in the last few decades.
Oh, yeah, the numbers are pretty striking.
I mean, back in 1960, it was just a tiny fraction of people who chose cremation, like around 3.5%.
3.56% to be exact, but yeah, a very small percentage.
Right. And then fast forward to 2020, that number jumps to over 56%. That's more than doubling.
More than doubled, and it's projected to keep rising.
Really?
Yeah, by 2040, projections suggest that almost 80% of people will be choosing cremation.
Wow, 80%. That's a huge shift. So what's driving this change? Why are so many people moving away from traditional burial and opting for cremation?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors, honestly. Cost is a big one. Traditional burials can be incredibly expensive, easily exceeding $10,000.
And $1,000 or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, especially when you consider that direct cremation can be significantly less expensive.
Exactly. Direct cremation can range from $1,000 to $3,000, so it's a pretty substantial difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference for a lot of families. And, that extra money could go toward something really meaningful, like a special tribute or a donation to a cause the person cared about.
That's a great point. It allows families to focus on celebrating a life rather than being burdened by those financial constraints.
Absolutely. And I'm also wondering if environmental concerns play a role in this trend, too. I mean, we're all becoming more aware of our impact on the planet.
You're right. Environmental awareness is definitely a factor. Studies have shown that cremation uses significantly less land than traditional burial, and it can also help reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
That makes sense. I mean, I've even heard about the rise of biodegradable urns and scattering options, so people are really looking for ways to make their final farewell a little bit greener.
Exactly. And I think that's a trend we're going to see even more of in the future as people become more conscious of those environmental choices.
It seems like people are really looking at cremation as a more sustainable option. So we've got cost, we've got environmental concerns. What else is motivating people to choose cremation over traditional burial?
Well, I think flexibility is a huge factor with cremation. You're not limited to a specific burial plot. You have more options in terms of what you do with the ashes.
Yeah, like scattering them in a meaningful location.
Right, exactly. You could scatter ashes in a place that was special to the person, maybe a favorite hiking trail or a beach they loved, or even a place they always dreamed of visiting.
And there are even more creative options, right? Like incorporating ashes into jewelry or art, or even planting them with a memorial tree.
Absolutely. The possibilities are really endless, and that's what appeals to a lot of people. They're not bound by tradition. They can create a truly personalized goodbye.
That's like taking some of the pressure off, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to follow those rigid expectations. You can do what feels right for you and for the person you're honoring.
Right. And it's worth mentioning that the religious landscape has also shifted over the years. Many religions that were once opposed to cremation have become more accepting of it, which has opened up the option for a wider range of people.
That's a great point. So we've talked about some of the reasons behind the rise of cremation, but let's get a little bit more practical here. You mentioned different types of cremation earlier.
Right. There are two main types, traditional and direct.
Okay, can you break those down for us?
Sure. So traditional cremation is probably what most people picture when they think of a funeral. It involved a service with the body present, followed by the cremation. So you have the viewing, the formal ceremony, the whole 9 yards, and then the cremation takes place afterwards.
So it's very similar to a traditional burial service, just with the cremation happening after the ceremony. And then what about direct cremation?
Direct cremation is a simpler and often more affordable option. It's basically where the cremation takes place without a formal funeral service beforehand. So families can choose to have a memorial service or a celebration of life later on their own terms.
Okay, so it's all about what feels right for the individual and their family. And I think that's a perfect segue into our next topic, which is memorialization, because that's where things get really interesting with cremation. There's a whole world of possibilities for how you choose to remember and honor someone's life.
Oh, absolutely. Cremation opens the door to so much creativity and personalization when it comes to memorialization.
It's like you can forget about those cookie cutter approaches and really think outside the box creates something unique and special that truly reflects the person who's passed.
And that's what we're going to explore next, all the amazing ways people are choosing to memorialize their loved ones beyond the traditional headstone.
All right, so we've talked about all these incredible memorialization options, and I think it's clear that memorial services after cremation can be just as unique and personal as the individual themselves. But where do we even begin with planning a service that really reflects all these choices?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that the focus should always be on celebrating a life, not getting bogged down in logistics, you know? It's about creating an experience that honors the person's memory and brings comfort to those who are left behind.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in all those details, but the heart of it really is about connection and remembrance. So where do we even start?
One of the first things to consider is the type of service that would best reflect the person we're honoring. Did they love tradition, or would they prefer a more laid-back celebration of life filled with, laughter and stories?
Right, so it's like a choice between a more formal service with rituals or a more casual gathering that focuses on those happy memories. And I imagine those can look pretty different in practice.
Oh, absolutely. A traditional service might be held in a place of worship with readings and hymns, maybe even a eulogy, while a celebration of life could be at a park or a beach with live music and people sharing stories and maybe even their favorite foods.
I love that it's all about creating an atmosphere that really reflects who they were and what they love. And I think location plays a big part in that too.
Definitely location is key, and it doesn't have to be limited to funeral homes or places of worship. It could be their home, a favorite restaurant, a place that held special meaning for them. Think outside the box.
I love that idea. And speaking of reflecting someone's personality, what are some ways to add those little personal touches to really make a service unique and memorable?
Oh, the possibilities are endless. Think about music that reflects their taste. Maybe they were a die-hard country music fan or loved classical music. You could have readings that capture their spirit, a favorite poem, a passage from a book, or even lyrics from a song that meant something to them. Photo displays are always a great way to share memories. And don't forget about mementos. Do they have a collection of something or a beloved hobby? Those details can really bring their personality to life.
It's like weaving those threads of their life into the fabric of the service and creating something that feels authentic and personal. And it sounds like this level of personalization can be applied to any type of service, whether it's more traditional or more contemporary.
Absolutely. It's all about tailoring the experience to reflect the individual and their unique spirit. It's their story we're telling, and we want to tell it well.
Okay, so we've talked about the type of service location and the importance of personalization, but let's not forget about the logistics. There are those practical considerations that come with planning any event, especially one as emotionally charged as a memorial service.
Right, things like catering, if you're planning to have food transportation for guests, if the location is a bit far-flung, seating arrangements, if you're expecting a large crowd, and sound equipment, if you're planning to have music or speeches.
It's easy to overlook those details, but they can really make a difference in how smoothly the event flows.
Yeah.
And I imagine the timing of the service is another thing to consider. Does it always have to happen immediately after the cremation?
Not at all. That's one of the benefits of cremation. It gives you a lot more flexibility. Families can hold the service right away, or they can wait weeks, even months. It's really about honoring their needs and giving them the time and space they need to process their grief and plan something meaningful.
That makes sense. There's no right or wrong timeline. It's about what feels right for everyone involved. And I imagine with all these decisions to make, having some guidance would be incredibly helpful. What role do funeral directors play in this process?
Oh, funeral directors are amazing resources. They offer support information and expertise every step of the way. They can help you understand all your options, walk you through the legal and logistical details, and really help you plan a service that truly honors the person who has passed away.
It sounds like they can really ease the burden and make the whole process a lot less daunting.
Exactly. Don't hesitate to reach out to a funeral director for support. They are there to help you through every step, and they're dedicated to making this process as smooth and meaningful as possible.
That's really reassuring to know. And, as we're talking about all this, it's important to acknowledge the emotional side of things too, right? We're talking about loss and grief and saying goodbye. Those are really big and complex emotions, and I imagine everyone experiences them differently.
You're absolutely right. Grief is a very personal journey, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach to navigating it.
So how do we even approach these conversations, both with ourselves and with our loved ones, in a way that's sensitive and understanding?
I think it's all about open and honest communication. Create a space where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings without judgment. Sometimes just being present and offering support is the most powerful thing you can do.
That's a great point. Just being there listening, offering a shoulder to lean on can make a world of difference. And what about when those emotions feel really overwhelming? Are there resources available to help people cope with loss and grief?
Absolutely. Therapists, grief counselors, support groups, these can all be invaluable resources.
Yeah.
They offer a safe and supportive environment to process emotions, share experiences, and learn healthy coping mechanisms. And there's no shame in reaching out for professional help if you need it. There's no need to go through this alone.
That's such an important reminder. There's support available, and it's okay to ask for help.
hmm
What are some key takeaways you want listeners to keep in mind when it comes to planning a memorial service and navigating those emotional aspects of loss?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that you have choices. Whether it's the type of service, the location, the level of personalization, you can create an experience that truly reflects the person you're honoring and brings comfort to those who love them.
It's about letting go of those rigid expectations and creating something that feels really authentic and meaningful. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to feel your emotions and seek support when you need it.
Those are all such important things to remember.
It's amazing to think about all the different ways we can create these lasting tributes. And as we've been talking, I keep coming back to this idea that saying goodbye is really evolved. It's not about those old traditions anymore.
It really has changed, hasn't it? There's a definite shift towards personalization, creativity, and I think a real focus on celebrating a life rather than just, mourning the loss.
Yeah, it's like we're moving away from those cookie cutter approaches and embracing something much more individualistic. It feels so much more authentic.
It does, and I think it's about finding those ways to express love and remembrance in a way that feels genuine and really, comes from the heart.
Absolutely. And that can look so different for everyone,
hmm
right? Some people find comfort in those traditional rituals, while others are looking for those unique and unconventional ways to honor someone's memory.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so beautiful. There's no right or wrong way to approach this. It's all about honoring the individual and creating a tribute that feels true to their spirit.
And that's such a powerful takeaway from our deep dive today, isn't it? It's not about following a script. It's about crafting a farewell that truly reflects the person we're remembering.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important message to leave our listeners with, embrace those possibilities, explore the options, and don't be afraid to think outside the box when it comes to honoring the lives of your loved ones.
So well said. And, we always love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts or stories or even questions about cremation and memorialization, please share them with us online.
We're always so eager to learn from your experiences and perspectives.
We'll be back next time with another thought-provoking exploration of a topic that matters.